You are carrying a secret. It's a heavy, silent suspicion that beneath your accomplishments and your daily routine, something is missing. You feel irreparably flawed, and you are entirely alone with it. Most people experience regret when they make a mistake, but toxic shame is different. It acts as a persistent atmosphere that colors every experience, making small failures feel like proof of your inadequacy, and your successes feel like accidents you haven't earned. When this state persists through childhood, it sheds its status as a temporary emotion. It settles into the psyche as an identity. This shift creates a dangerous blind spot. Because you've lived with this feeling for so long, you stop recognizing it as a symptom. You conclude that you are the problem, rather than a person who is currently suffering from one. The difference comes down to the object of the criticism. Guilt targets your behavior, telling you that you did a bad thing. Toxic shame targets your soul. It tells you that you are a bad thing. This creates a psychological trap. You can apologize for an action, but you cannot apologize for your existence. Without a path to repair, the shame loop drives you deeper into isolation. Moving forward requires accepting a single difficult truth. You are not the wound. You are the person who was wounded. Trying to fix this feeling by working harder or being better will always fail. You're attempting to solve an identity crisis by managing behavior, but you cannot change who you are by simply adjusting what you do. This feeling rarely begins with a single dramatic event. Dr. Gabor Maté points out that trauma often flourishes in an airless environment. Emotional neglect, or a childhood where love felt conditional, deprives a child of the consistent attunement they need to feel secure. A child depends entirely on their caregivers for survival. If those caregivers are unavailable or critical, the child faces a terrifying realization: the people they need to stay alive are not safe or reliable. To a child, an unsafe caregiver is a threat too large to handle. To stay sane, they make a brilliant, tragic trade. They decide that the caregiver is perfect, and the reason they feel unloved is because they are personally defective. Taking on that badness allowed you to maintain a connection to the people you needed. The shame was never yours. It was given to you before you could refuse it. What feels like an incurable flaw today was actually a successful survival strategy. It was the logical conclusion of a child who chose to feel bad so they didn't have to feel abandoned. As you grow up, your psyche builds massive walls to ensure that this perceived badness is never exposed. These defenses act as managers, rigidly controlling your life to prevent any situation where you might feel vulnerable or seen. These walls appear in the adult world as specific shame screens. You might see them in your own life as relentless perfectionism, the need to overachieve, or an inability to say no. Over decades, these protective behaviors become so familiar that they disappear into your self-concept. The armor felt like a personality. It was protection. The cost of this defense is total exhaustion. By mistaking your trauma responses for your personality, you remain hidden. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel isolated because you are only letting them see the wall. Dismantling this feeling requires updating your history with the truth. Because your environment was broken, you assumed you were the broken one, but your reaction was a normal response to an impossible situation. This leads to unblending, distinguishing your true, intact self from the heavy external layer of shame carried since childhood. Once that outer shell is removed, the core beneath is completely undisturbed. Believing you were bad was always a misunderstanding of your past. When the burden shifts, you can finally see the reality. There is nothing wrong with you. There was something wrong with what happened to you. Recognizing toxic shame as a retired defense mechanism allows you to step away from its influence. You are no longer required to believe the conclusions of a child who is just trying to survive. You can finally put down the armor. Your core self was never actually damaged. It was only hidden for safekeeping until it was safe to be seen again. As the harsh reflection clears, you can finally begin to meet yourself with deep curiosity instead of disgust. Recovery ends with an introduction to the whole, undamaged person who has been there all along.